This film documents the Vietnam War in the words of Americans who served there. It features home movies and rare archival footage collected during a worldwide search. Many scenes are graphic in nature, and viewer discretion is advised.
And I served 2 years. I know what it's about.
I have a son that's going to go into the army.
We fight because we must fight. If we're to live in a world where every country can shape its own destiny, we will not be defeated.
For 3 years, peace talks between the United States and North Vietnam have been going on in Paris, with little or no progress. In January of 1971, the talks remain deadlocked, as do the private meetings between National Security Advisor Henry Kissinger and North Vietnamese negotiator Le Duc Tho. Nonetheless, President Nixon is moving ahead with his policy of Vietnamization, the plan to eventually turn over all combat responsibilities to the South Vietnamese Army, known as the ARVN. As a result of the ongoing U.S. withdrawals, pressure is increasing, not only on the ARVN, but also on the remaining Americans to carry the full load of combat operations.
Every one of these guys thinks he's a damn cowboy. And I'm the lucky guy that gets to lead him into battle.
29-year-old Major Bob Kluwel was a military advisor to the ARVN in 1964. He returns to Vietnam as a company commander in the 101st Assault Helicopter Battalion.
My captains are experienced. Some of my pilots are all recently commissioned. With
a few exceptions, they were all on pretty much their first tours.
Of course, when it comes down to it, every one of them knows exactly what's expected of them. And they're more than prepared to do what I ask. Which is a hell of a comfort, because I've just gotten orders saying we're about to get into a big operation.
Since the start of the war, the Ho Chi Minh Trail, the enemy's main supply route into the south, has been a thorn in the side of the Americans and the South Vietnamese. After years of heavy bombing failed to sever the trail, a 1970 ground incursion into Cambodia finally succeeded in destroying a massive amount of enemy weapons and ammunition. Now, U.S. and ARVN commanders hope that a similar assault against the northern end of the trail, located in Laos, will result in the destruction of an even greater amount of supplies and disrupt enemy operations long enough for Vietnamization to take hold. Codenamed Operation Lam Son 719, the plan is to send an armored South Vietnamese force speeding down Highway 9 to the village of Chapone, which is believed to be a major enemy supply depot. At the same time, U.S. helicopter units, including Major Bob Kluwel and his men, will insert ARVN ground troops north and south of the highway to act as a blocking force and destroy any additional supply caches in the immediate area. In total, 12,000 South Vietnamese are heading into Laos, And for the first time since American forces took over primary military leadership, they will do all of the ground fighting. A congressional amendment enacted a month earlier prohibits U.S. ground forces from setting foot outside South Vietnam. Lam Son 719 will be the first real test of whether or not the South Vietnamese military is prepared to lead the war by themselves.
Right as we're about to take off, a couple of my pilots ask, who the hell are we supposed to talk to on the ground in Laos, since none of the ARVN we're dropping off there speak English? I tell them not to worry, because we've got translators standing by. But in the back of my mind, I have a terrible feeling that we're heading into trouble.
Heavy fighting has broken out in Laos again today after 3 days.
4 cameramen are reported missing in Laos tonight, and it's believed that they were killed in a helicopter crash.
One of the journalists killed covering Lam Son 719 is a friend of UPI correspondent Joe Galloway. Galloway was last in Vietnam during the Ya Drang Valley battles almost 6 years earlier. His boss now requests he return to take the place of his friend.
Although I had fought to get there the first time, I left there thinking I never wanted to come back again. I had seen the war, and I thought my part of it's over. I told my wife, and she said, you can't do that. You're still grieving for your friends, and you're going to go there and put yourself in the same situation? And I said, well, I have to do it. And she said, well, if you go, I may not be here when you come back. And I said, I may not come back. I began to think we're all supposed to die in that place.
Galloway arrives during the second week of Lam Son 719 and finds the military situation even grimmer than he expected. Nearly 60,000 NVA are massing to launch vicious assaults against the 12,000 South Vietnamese. The armored column is stopped only halfway to Chapon. Finally, during the third week of fighting, a quick decision is made to break west and establish 3 landing zones, known as Lolo, Liz, and Sophia. With the armored column still bogged down on Highway 9, ARVN and U.S. commanders plan to helicopter approximately 1,600 ARVN ground troops into these LZs in the hopes that they can jumpstart the advance to Chapon.
Top 2, Loyal 1-2, can you pick up auction going into the LZ?
Get that altitude.
Yep.
Major Bob Kluel and his company are among the 30 choppers selected for the missions at LZ Lolo.
And Chalk 6 is taking fire.
Witch Doctor 05, this is Bird 6, say your location.
Jesus, man, what the hell is going on out there? Over the radios, we can hear the choppers ahead of us. They're taking heavy fire from all over the LZ.
4629 is the lead. Our lead aircraft was hit.
Top 2, take over the flight. I'm going down to look for Witch Doctor 5.
I saw one aircraft explode and I saw the other one.
I look down, and it's like the terrain is moving beneath us. There must be several hundred enemy soldiers, heavily
camouflaged, all moving together like a carpet, you know. And then as we got close to the landing zone, began as a mass to shoot at the helicopter.
Within minutes, 2 of my choppers are shot down. Over the radio, I can hear our pilots calling for rescue, but nobody can get down to get them.
Kluel and the remaining choppers are determined to rescue the 8 downed Americans from their company. For over an hour, they circle the LZ. The But with their fuel and ammunition nearly depleted, they are finally forced to head back to the base at Khe
I have
Sanh.
no contact with my leadership at the present time.
When we get to Khe Sanh, everyone's exhausted. But there's no way I'm going to leave our guys out there. So I gather everyone together
So
and I ask the
you know,
guys, I say,
I said,
you know guys are
guys are still alive out there. And so we're going to go back out and get our guys, make an effort. You don't have to come with us, but I'd like to see a show of hands of those that do want to come with us. And sure enough, everybody raised their hand.
As we head back towards Lolo, I feel an incredible sense of pride. This is what being part of a chopper crew is all about.
In March of 1971, South Vietnamese ground troops are in battle against the North Vietnamese, and for the first time, they're without U.S. advisors or ground support. Only U.S. air crews, including Major Bob Kluel and his choppers, are in the thick of the fight. They are speeding towards landing zone Lolo in Laos to rescue the 8 men from his company who were shot down by the NVA.
My mind's racing a mile a minute, running through every possible scenario. Only one thing's for sure. We've got men down there, and we aren't leaving without them. These men are some of the most courageous, most dedicated soldiers I have ever met. Every one of them knew exactly what kind of hell was out here, and yet not a single one even hesitated at the thought of coming back for their friends.
In total, 7 choppers are shot down and 2 American lives lost at LZ Lolo. But thanks to the courage and determination of Kluel and his fellow pilots and crewmen, no American, dead or alive, is left behind.
In all my years in the military, I've never been more proud or more awed by the bravery of men.
Three days later, the push continues as 120 American choppers lift off to deliver 800 additional ARVN ground troops within striking distance of their ultimate target, Chapone. They arrive to find the NVA have stripped the village of almost everything of value. Chapone is not even close to being the massive enemy supply depot military commanders expected. Over the next 3 weeks, as the 17,000 ARVN troops now inside Laos begin to withdraw, the North Vietnamese lay siege to those furthest inside the country. With their troops surrounded and outnumbered, inexperienced South Vietnamese commanders begin to lose control, forcing U.S. choppers to come to their rescue.
Our pilots risk their own lives to save them, going in again and again. Some of them are being shot down 2, 3 times a day.
3 times a day. They'd be shot down, rescued, go back, get another helicopter, fly back out, get shot down again. Absolutely insane. You go in the club at night, and all of their pilots and crew had their name tags on cup hooks hanging behind the bar. And you could come in and take a look, and those who got killed that day, they turned upside down. So you could scan the roster, as it were, and see who was alive still.
By the time Operation Lam-Son 719 concludes, nearly 3,800 ARVN have been killed. 253 Americans are dead, and over 1,100 wounded.
It was a disaster. It was supposed to prove that the South Vietnamese were competent and capable and could take over the American role. That was the graduation
exercise. But I'm afraid all it's shown is even though the South Vietnamese soldiers fought valiantly, their leadership is nowhere near ready to take control of this war.
But that is not the message President Nixon delivers to the nation.
Did the Laotian operation contribute to the goals we sought? I've just completed my assessment of that operation, and here are my conclusions. The South Vietnamese demonstrated that without American advisors, they could fight effectively against the very best troops North Vietnam could put in the field.
They wanted to spin it as a success, but that it should be amply evident to anyone who looked at the situation and be able to understand this war is lost.
Less than 3 weeks after President Nixon delivers his assessment of Lam-Son 719, a 5-day-long demonstration in Washington, D.C., organized by Vietnam Veterans Against the War, garners huge publicity and controversy. On the 4th day of the event, VVAW spokesman John Kerry testifies before Congress. He is the first Vietnam veteran to do so.
Each day, to facilitate the process by which the United States washes her hands of Vietnam, someone has to give up his life, so that the United States doesn't have to admit something that the entire world already knows, so that we can't say that we've made a mistake. And we are asking Americans to think about that. Because how do you ask a man to be the last man to die in Vietnam?
The day after Kerry's testimony, the veterans converge in front of the Capitol for their final day of demonstrations. Among them is former Second Lieutenant Barry Romo.
When we get to the Capitol, everyone lines up, and every single person, one at a time, takes the medals they had won in Vietnam and throws them away. And when it's my turn to step forward and throw it down,
and then all I said was, these aren't worth shit. I couldn't say anything else. All I could think about, my nephew, I was awarded a Bronze Star with a V, and of course he died to get his. And so all I could think about was the sacrifice that he had made for the same thing that I had done.
Someone told me long ago, there's a calm before the storm. I know it's been coming for some time. I won't know, have you ever seen rain coming down Sunday?
I can't say I'll miss this place, but I sure as hell will miss these guys. Although from the looks of things, they'll all be following me home soon enough.
In July of 1971, Major Bob Kluel completes his tour of duty having flown over 600 combat hours as company commander.
No matter what anyone says, we came here to fight for democracy, just like our fathers did in World War II. Just like them, we wanted to spare our families from the horrors of war, the things that they had seen
that they
and
couldn't talk about. You know, as a consequence, we felt a deep commitment to serve our country in Vietnam.
This war may not be the most popular anymore, but we know that we did what we were asked to do, to the best of our abilities.
Throughout 1971, U.S. forces accelerate their withdrawal from Vietnam. The difficulties demonstrated by the ARVN's first major operation without U.S. ground support hasn't lessened Nixon's determination to turn the war over to the South Vietnamese. In March of 1972, with U.S. troop strength the lowest it has been in 7 years, the NVA suddenly stunned the world by launching a massive three-pronged attack into the South. Nearly 150,000 enemy troops, along with supporting armor and artillery units, launched conventional frontal assaults against thinly held ARVN defensive lines. As some South Vietnamese units begin to crumble, President Nixon once again goes on national television, this time to try to help a faltering ally by building a case for a new phase of the war.
Throughout the war in Vietnam, the United States has exercised a degree of restraint unprecedented in the annals of war. However, when the enemy abandons all restraint, throws its whole army into battle on the territory of its neighbor, refuses to negotiate, we simply face a new situation. In these circumstances, any president who failed to act decisively would have betrayed the trust of his country and betrayed the cause of world peace.
After a 3-year suspension, the U.S. begins large-scale bombings inside North Vietnam. For the first time, the North Vietnamese capital of Hanoi is targeted. Over the next 5.5 months, 200,000 tons of bombs rain down on the North, while U.S. forces complete their final withdrawal from the South. President Nixon, who is running for re-election, is under pressure to bring the troops home. And so despite the ongoing bombing, on August 11th, 1972, the last U.S. ground combat unit departs South Vietnam. America's ground operations officially end. But the war in Vietnam does not. Without a signed peace treaty, the future of South Vietnam, as well as more than 500 American prisoners of war who are awaiting release in the North, remains uncertain. Finally, in October, Henry Kissinger announces a breakthrough in his negotiation with North Vietnam's Le Duc Tho.
Peace is at hand. We believe that an agreement is within sight.
But days after Kissinger's optimistic announcement, South Vietnam's President Thieu rejects the treaty when he learns it allows North Vietnamese troops to remain in the South. Resolution of the POW issue goes on hold. For Ann Purcell, whose husband Ben was captured almost 5 years before, it is almost unbearable.
It was a roller coaster. We felt hopeful, and then our hope would be dashed, and then again a hope, and then dashed again. It was just a roller coaster one week after the other. And I remember saying to the Lord in prayer, when I don't know how much longer I can hold on.
Negotiations continue for the next 3 months, until on January 27, 1973, after continued bombing of the North and much U.S. pressure on the South, all parties finally signed the Paris Peace Accords. Hostilities are to cease immediately, but North Vietnamese troops are allowed to stay inside the South, on the condition that they do not continue to build up their forces or resume aggressions.
I have asked for this radio and television time tonight for the purpose of announcing that we today have concluded an agreement to end the war and bring peace with honor in Vietnam and in Southeast Asia.
Years earlier, at the end of World War II, Times Square in New York City erupted in spontaneous celebration. Not so in 1973.
This is Ken Albert in Times Square in New York City, where the major visible observance is the end of the war is the great sign Peace down the side of the Allied Chemical Building. The sign flashed on and the moving news wire below it signaled the word over and over for a minute. And on this rainy, cold evening here, there were a few around to see it. Times Square, which had filled again and again over the years with crowds demanding peace, and a rather smaller crowd to celebrate its arrival. There were other observances as the hour came.
8 years after the Marines first landed in Vietnam, the war that divided a nation is finally over. And the unwinding of America's involvement can begin. Three weeks after the Paris Peace Agreement is signed, the return of America's prisoners of war begins. For hundreds of families across America, it's the end of an emotional journey.
After 5.5 years, I know what makes America great. It's you, the people. Thank you so much for your support. I love you this much. I love you this much.
My stomach is in knots. For 5 years, I've done nothing but dream about this moment. Dear Mrs. Benjamin Purcell,
on behalf of the Secretary of the Army, I wish to inform you. I can't do it. Give me a minute. And that's strange that I'd cry when I knew he was coming up. We all were transported by bus or sedan to the airport, and we were all waiting in our little groups. And we were all waiting and waiting and waiting till the plane came, and they had the red carpet. They had all these bank of microphones for them to each one speak as they got off. Ben was the highest ranking.
Was the highest ranking on the plane. They let him off first.
Distinguished arrival, Colonel Benjamin H. Purcell.
As soon as Ben steps out the door, the children start screaming. They're so excited they can barely control themselves. Even I can hardly keep myself together.
Fellow Georgians, some 5.5 years ago,
I'm trying so hard to control myself and wait for him to finish speaking. But all I want to do is just touch him so that I can be sure that this is for real and that he's real.
The Gulf of Mexico. Instead,
I can't take it anymore. So in the middle of this speech, I run out of the crowd and straight up to him.
At this moment, my years of loneliness and my wife's long vigil comes to a happy end.
When I could run out there and hug you, I knew that you were finally home. And then I think that's the moment that it took for me to really believe that you were going to come back.
What a wonderful thing. You're my angel.
For many Americans, the return of the POWs marks the final conclusion of the Vietnam War. The troubles of Southeast Asia slipped from the daily newscasts, giving way to reports of the Watergate break-in and subsequent political firestorm.
There was talk this weekend that the president should resign and under siege because of the Watergate scandal.
As president, I must put the interests of America first. Therefore, I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
I, Gerald R. Ford, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute.
By the time Gerald Ford assumes the presidency in August of 1974, U.S. aid to South Vietnam has been cut by 75% since its height a year earlier. For the ARVN, who've depended upon American money and military supplies since 1954, the cutbacks have a devastating effect. Planes sit idle on runways, unable to take off because of lack of fuel. Artillery pieces that had once been allocated 100 rounds per day are rationed to only 10. But while the ARVN supplies are dwindling, the North Vietnamese are rebuilding their military strength. On March 10, 1975, just over 2 years after the Paris Peace Agreement was signed, hopes for an independent South Vietnam come crumbling down. The North Vietnamese launched their largest and most ambitious offensive yet into the South. As ARVN units begin to falter, hundreds of thousands of South Vietnamese civilians run for their lives. On April 21st, President Thieu resigns. 4 days later, NVA forces reach the outskirts of Saigon. On April 29th, as Saigon crumbles, a small contingent of U.S. State Department, CIA workers, and Marines who remained in Vietnam begin a hasty and desperate evacuation of South Vietnamese civilians and government employees who had worked with the United States. Tens of thousands of people scramble onto U.S. ships waiting offshore. As they run out of space for people, millions of dollars of military equipment is dumped into the ocean. On April 30th, just before 8 a.m., the last American chopper to leave Saigon lifts off from the roof of the embassy. Less than 4 hours later, North Vietnamese tanks crash through the gates of the presidential palace. 4 o'clock, a live radio broadcast announces Saigon is officially renamed Ho Chi Minh City.
Saigon is fallen, the presidential palace is taken. It was over. It was over.
Nobody asked them, did you want to go? The military people didn't have a vote. We didn't get a chance to say, yeah, I'd like to go to war. We were directed to do it, and by God, we did it.
But in my kids' eyes, it was a thing of value, and they're very proud of me. That changed my life. That changed my life in a lot of ways at that point.
The country wasn't on the best of terms with the Vietnam vets for a long time, but that's changed. And I'm very proud of that fact. The veterans who serve today get a great send-off, they get a great welcome home. Now, I never got that, but I don't care, because today they are getting it. And in my mind, that's my welcome home, because of what I suffered through. These people today are reaping the benefit, and I'm just so glad that the country has realized that our men and women who serve this great country are appreciated.
I don't think that anybody should ever apologize or feel the need to apologize for the effort that our soldiers in Vietnam put in. The American soldier did everything and were successful at everything that they were asked to do.
We had, again, people that felt that they were not going to come back, but they went over there and they served their country. So I remember the brave people that went over there and did what we asked of them.
You know, they say the World War II guys were the best generation. Well, those who fought every war since then were the best of their generation. They went, they served, they sacrificed, and they fought like tigers. They were noble.